Thank you so much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I would like to thank my honourable and gallant friend for securing this debate and giving these important issues the parliamentary attention they deserve, and for meeting with me in January, where he highlighted his concerns with the water industry and helpfully set out what he is trying to achieve with his bill. For several years, he has been a fearless environmental campaigner on this and many other issues. And I'd like to thank as well all campaigners and indeed all of the public for the interest that they have in the water industry. They're quite right to hold the government's feet to the fire on this, and they're quite right to expect so much better than they've had over the past 14 years. And the promise I can make to all of them is that that is my duty, that is my job, and that is what I serve every day in this place to do, to improve and clean up our rivers, lakes and seas and deliver a fair water system for everybody. And while there might be differences of opinion in how we get there, the motivation that is behind the actions that I take could not be questioned. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity to discuss this, and I'd like to also thank all honourable members who have contributed to this important and wide-ranging debate, and all honourable members who attended, not mentioning the ones who maybe didn't. So the Right Honourable Member for Hackney South and Shoreditch, the Chair of the Treasury Select Committee, made a really important contribution talking about the big nasties, those things that we knew when we came into government that would be costing so much money, the competition that water would potentially face against roads, rails, schools and so much more that needs repairing. And she's also right to point out that when we talk about shareholders, sometimes in the public imagination we imagine this, rich business person with all of the shares holding them. Quite often it is the pension funds, and pension funds would require compensation if this was moved into a nationalised situation. And that compensation, otherwise that compensation, if it wasn't provided, would have an impact on people's pensions. So there are real world I'm going to come to nearly everyone's contributions in 15 minutes, and I will try and get through as many as possible. And that has a real-world impact. But she's right to point out the appalling state of the rivers and the fact that not enough are in good chemical health. And there is much more to do. And to just reassure her on wet wipes, we've had fatbergs mentioned in this debate today. Work on legislation to ban those are ongoing at this moment. And my right honourable friend for Islington North, again, agree that there is so much more that we need to do, and the levels of pollution are, of course, unacceptable. I completely support what he's saying on natural flood prevention, and hopefully, if time allows, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail later. And he'll be very pleased to know that only a few weeks ago we released some beavers into the wild to provide some of the service of that natural flood prevention that we all need. The only thing I would say, though, is that we do have some of the cleanest water, some of the cleanest water in the world. In fact, our drinking water in England is exceptionally high, and the UK was ranked in the top 8 countries in the world for drinking water safety in the 2024 Environmental Performance Index. And I would like to thank the very small regulator that doesn't often get much attention, the Drinking Water Inspectorate, which is the one responsible for keeping our water clean. They do an incredible job, and I want to put on my record my thanks to them. So I would just say I think our water that we have in this country is incredibly clean, and I would encourage everyone to feel completely safe as they continue to drink it. And my honourable friend, the member for Bury North, in his usual gentlemanly way, praising my gallant friend for his service, and I completely echo his remarks. And I'd like to make the offer to all members to support them in seeking accountability from water companies if they require it. And this was something I discussed yesterday with some of the water industry reps. And if you want us to discuss further his request to look at environmental protection for the river, happy to take that up. And my honourable friend, the member for Ashford, highlights the anger the public feel about water pollution and indeed the failure of the past years. And he mentioned the number of primary schools which came up in this debate frequently. But unfortunately, the appalling situation of many of them becoming ill when they go down into the water. This is completely unacceptable. And again, we take really seriously about the impact that water has and entering water has on public health. And that's one of the many reasons why I'm really pleased that Sir Chris Whitty is on the Water Commission giving his expert evidence. And the member for North West Lincolnshire, thank her for her work on the Water Special Measures Bill Committee, and she's right to be outraged by the levels of pollution and for her tireless campaigning for her constituents who have been flooded over the years. And my honourable friend, the member for Beckham and Pence, and the awful outages his constituents face and the poor service of distribution. Vulnerable customers should always receive water that should be delivered, and he's quite right to point to the priority and service register. And one thing I'd like to ask each member in this House house to do actually is encourage people in your community who are vulnerable, make sure they're on that priority services register, because they are entitled to support in the event of an outage. Happy to follow this up with him after if he would want. And I echo his thanks to his volunteers. And I'm sure on Valentine's Day, as he was going around supporting his constituents, they felt incredibly loved by him as their new Member of Parliament. My honourable friend, the member for Paisley and Wrensham North, talked about the importance of effective regulation and long-term planning for investment, and I thank her for her work on the Environmental Audit Committee. And I should just mention, because as a former primary school teacher, I can't resist, Madam Deputy Speaker, highlighting some of the schools that were mentioned by my friend from Beckham and Penge, who were involved with the Eco Society. So Daniel and the Eco Society at Longley Park School for Boys, Stuart Fleming Primary, Ballagren Primary, Churchfields Primary, Clare House, Shortlands Primary and St Mark's Primary. Very excellent work on your eco clubs, to you and all of the others around the country. And my honourable friend, more comments from my honourable friend for Bermondsey and Old Southwark, shared his ambition to seek solutions to the problem that he faces, and that is exactly what drives me to, and that's exactly what we should be doing here in this chamber today, is seeking solutions together for the problems that we face. And I thank him for his work that he does supporting his constituents, and he always has my support on this, though I've got no doubt at all that he doesn't need much support from me in making his voice or opinions held, or holding indeed those companies to account. And my honourable friend, the member for Gateshead and Wickham, raised Larkin. Now, he might not know, without us going too far in a history lesson, that Larkin spent many years in Hull, actually working at Hull University. So he's celebrated in my constituency too. And as a former teacher, again, agree about the importance of education and the awful impact that flooding has on schools opening. And I share his restlessness for change. And just to say a bit more about, because it came up in conversation actually around this Ofwat consultation on the bonus ban, so I want to address that head on. So this week Ofwat published their statutory consultation setting out the details of the metrics that would trigger the ban and start the clock on implementation. Now, it is right that originally they were consulting just on banning on the basis of a Category 1 or Category 2 offence, and it is right that they're looking at more holistic measure of environmental performance through the use of the EA's Environmental Performance Assessment. Now, for those who, just to share awareness, the EPA includes a number of different metrics. So it does include Category 1 and 2, serious pollution incidents, but it also includes self-reporting, discharge permit compliance, use and disposal of sludge, and, as has come up in this debate today, outages as well, is all holistically put together into one rating. However, I and the public have been crystal clear about our expectation that bonuses should be banned for polluting water bosses. So should the consultation reveal that Ofwat's proposed metrics need strengthening, Ofwat will review this ahead of final implementation. And my honourable member for Brent East, there's more that can be, much more that needs to be done, and he's right to point out the consequence of leaks on potholes and wider damage. There's always been very thoughtful contributions from my honourable friend. And too, I celebrate with her our government tackling tax avoidance schemes, and I was delighted I got a chance to meet Sir Steve Redgrave the other day when he came into DEFRA to hand the letter to me, along with rowers from Reading University, so we could talk about the importance of rowing and having clean rivers in which for them to row. And my honourable member for Stockton North, thanks for the support on the Water Special Measures Bill. And of course, I like the idea of rivers being part of our identity and rivers shaping the people. What a lovely message to leave us all with. And my honourable friend from Chatham and Aylesford sharing thanks and advocacy for his campaign groups, as always. And he's right, the bill is part of the government's plan to change. And of course we want to deliver more. There is no magic bullet in fixing this problem, and that includes the magic bullet not being ownership. Now, turning to my honourable and gallant friend for Norwich South, he says we can do it better. We can. We can do it better. We absolutely can. This Labour Party was elected on a manifesto for change. It was elected with a plan to change. The Labour Party was created to serve working people and the working class, and it is our duty to do that, and that is what drives us every single day. There is little trust in politics, so little trust in politicians as a force for good. There is no benefit of the doubt ever given to politicians When people are asked about something, the assumption is always that we have an ulterior motive. And the only way we can change that, the only way we can change the public's opinion of politicians is by delivery and by changing. My honourable friend talks of ideologically driving us, but it is quite simple. My entire focus is doing on everything I can to clean up our waterways. I care about the public being ripped off. I care about the people working on the front line for these water companies who face abuse for the job that they do. And I care desperately about the natural environment. And this is what drives me, and this is what I know I will be judged on. My approach to decisions is always really quite simple. It is how can I deliver my aims in the fairest and quickest way possible. So yes, we can do better. Yes, we are doing better. And yes, I expect you, everyone, to hold me to account to do better every day. This is why in week 1 of this new Labour government, in fact, day 1 of me walking into DEFRA, I was told this meeting was happening on my very first day, that we met with all the water companies, got them to change the Articles of Association and put customer representatives on the board of water companies. Week 4 in Parliament, we introduced the Water Special Measures Bill, and which was a down payment on future reforms, never intended to be the answer to all of the solutions. A couple of months later, we launched the Water Commission to fundally reset the entire industry. Then we changed the rules on bathing water. Then we secured £104 billion of investment in the water industry. Then we did the call for evidence. And now I'm visiting every single water board up and down the country to hold them to account for the promises that they've made and make sure they deliver on ending water poverty by 2030. And I will do more, Madam Deputy Speaker, because this is what I care about, this is what this government cares about, and this is about delivering change in this place, and this is what we were elected to do. So I want to make one thing clear, if nothing else. This government is absolutely committed to improving the performance of the water sector. And I just want to say just a little bit more, if I may, on some of the abuse employees are facing. Because I've heard from some of the trade unions about this, and it's an issue that matters to me a lot. When employees are going down to fix sewage mains or deal with pollution incidents, they are not the ones responsible for it. And they are facing quite a lot of abuse when they go out and do their job. Now, I would hope that is something that all of us, regardless of our opinions on water companies' ownership or models, would agree to say that abusing the people on the front line trying to clean up the mess is unacceptable. And the trade unions who are talking about this and the people working there have my full and complete support. Right, I think I've pretty much run out of time, haven't I, Madam Speaker? I've noticed you're going to start coughing at me soon. But just quickly on nationalisation, the costs that are quoted, I often see the criticism when we talk about the cost of nationalisation, and people say, you're quoting this think tank, it's the Social Market Foundation, you're quoting a think tank, those figures are wrong. So, of course, one of the things I did when I came in was interrogate the figures around the costs of nationalisation. So the costs of nationalisation that we use, that this government used, the £99 billion, are based on Ofwat's regulatory capital value of the 2024 estimates. Now, that doesn't include the Bazalgette Tunnel, which obviously would be an asset, which would be included in that figure. So that's where the figures come from, because I often get told we're using different costs. And if we were to, so if you put that to one side, that's the regulated capital value of the assets that we have, but that doesn't assume the ongoing costs. So assuming we would want to deliver PR24, £104 billion of investment, you would be talking about the £104 billion of investment over the next 5 years, plus the cost of acquiring assets. So I just want to be really clear on the figures that we are using. And I also was going to come back and respond to agriculture pollution, because I know that's something the Honourable Lady cares a lot about. So agriculture and rural land management accounts for around 70% of land use, one of the greatest sources of water pollution in England, affecting 45% of our water bodies. And the levels of pollution are unacceptable. That is why cleaning up our rivers, lakes and seas is a priority of this government, and we're working with farmers to reduce agriculture pollution, which is key to delivering against this priority. We've committed to a rapid review of the Environmental Improvement Plan, which will set out how DEFRA will deliver these legally binding targets. And the government will develop a new statutory plan to protect and restore our natural environment, with delivery plans to meet each of our ambitious environmental targets, which includes cleaning up the waterways. ways. So we're taking action to tackle agriculture pollution and deliver the Environment Act through a suite of proportionate and effective regulations, advice and incentives. So to conclude, the call for evidence for the Water Commission is live now, Madam Deputy Speaker. So if anyone in this House wanted to assemble a group of citizens to come together in their local communities to discuss this and put their evidence forward, then I would entirely welcome it. Because this government will not stop till we achieve what we promised in our manifesto, which is to clean up our rivers, lakes and seas. That is what drives me, that is what motivates me, and that is what I will continue working on as I finish this debate. Yeah.